错的黑夜手一盏骨头。
A netizen shared a video clip which briefly talked about what the Chinese Communist Party has done during the Cultural Revolution era and all the atrocities that it has brought to the Chinese people then.
All ideas contrary to Mao's thinking and the objects that represented them had to be destroyed. Not just Confucianism and Buddhism, but even more so foreign faiths like Christianity. Throughout the country, churches were closed, clergy unfrocked, religious symbols smashed. The statue of the Virgin Mary was replaced by a portrait of Mao. One form of worship gave way to another.
It became a much worse world.
The physical destruction wrought by the Red Guards was unparalleled even in China's long history. Monasteries all over the country, as far away as distant Tibet, were ransacked and razed to the ground. The most important sites, like the Forbidden City, were protected on the orders of Zhou Enlai. But elsewhere, Mao's stormtroopers.
A netizen shared about the Asian solidarity anti-racism rallies that have been taking place across the country, especially since the Georgia shooting in mid-March. An article mentioned about how it appears that in New York and San Francisco, the Chinese Communist Party was potentially behind these rallies. For example, in a rally that was held in Flushing, New York, on March 27th, a man was holding a placard with the words "Defend China and North Korea against U.S. imperialism." A netizen shared a video clip showing how at an anti-racism rally, a man holding a placard with the words "End violence against Asians, stand up against hate" strived to block a fellow Chinese protester who was holding a placard with the words "Hold CCP liable, stop Asian hate." This is yet again another example of the potential CCP influence of the anti-racism movement in the Asian and Pacific Islander community. A netizen shared that on March 29th, the U.S. Trade Representative Ambassador Catherine Tai posted a few tweets on Twitter regarding trade agreement with Myanmar. She said, quote, USTR will suspend all U.S. trade engagement with Burma under the 2013 Trade and Investment Framework Agreement. We support the people of Burma's efforts to restore a democratically elected government, which has been the foundation of Burma's economic growth and reform. We strongly condemn the Burmese security forces' brutal violence against civilians. The killing of peaceful protesters, students, workers, labor leaders, medics, and children has shocked the conscience of the international community. These actions are a direct assault on the country's transition to democracy and the efforts of the Burmese people to achieve a peaceful and prosperous future. A netizen shared that, in a recent meeting, the US and Japanese defense chiefs agreed to cooperate closely in the event of a military clash between Taiwan and the PRC. This was according to multiple government sources, as reported by a Japanese media. According to news reports, the U.S. Secretary of Defense brought up this issue during a meeting with the Japanese Defense Minister, although there was no discussion on the specifics of how the two countries should coordinate responses in the event of such an emergency. This was quite significant on Japan's part, primarily because, quote, Japan has historically refrained from commenting on potential emergency situations in Taiwan in relation to China, and its stance remains to, quote, encourage dialogue for a peaceful solution to cross-strait tensions, end of quote. And also, in a joint statement issued with Japan, U.S. Defense and State Secretary said, quote, China's behavior, where inconsistent with the existing international order, presents political, economic, military, and technological challenges to the alliance and to the international community, end of quote. A netizen shared that recently, the Belgian Senate passed a resolution to strengthen Taiwan's international status with 49 votes in favor and 0 against. The resolution requires that the Belgian government to bolster relations with Taiwan through the EU so that it can help Taiwan participate in international organizations, such as the World Health Organization, the International Civil Aviation Organization, and the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. A netizen shared a video clip. A leader in a religious community talked about an alleged agenda called the Great Reset behind this pandemic.
Then there is the mysterious Wuhan virus, about whose nature and prevention the mass media daily give us conflicting information. What is clear, however, is that it has been used by certain forces inimical to families and to the freedom of nations to advance their evil agenda. These forces tell us that we are now the subjects of the so-called Great Reset, the new normal, which is dictated to us by their manipulation of citizens and nations through ignorance and fear.
Child, we will take you in. Child, we will bring you home. You'll be a flower that sees the spring. Soon a dove flying high.